Okay, boys and girls, it's Mrs. Pelletier again, and I have another wonderful book about finding beauty in our world or making something beautiful, and it's called Wanda's Roses. It's by Pat Brisson, and it's illustrated by Mary Ann Coca Leffler. And this is Wanda, and we are going to, well, look at the cover for a minute. And what are you noticing? An old tire, a broken chair, an old flower pot in a door. And then she's kind of looking down at this stuff. So think about what you think she might be thinking. And then we're going to read to find out how Wanda, what she does to find beauty around her. Okay? One morning in May on the way to school, Wanda noticed a bush growing in the empty corner lot at Fillmore and Hudson Streets. It must have been growing for a while because it was about 2 feet tall, and Wanda was surprised she hadn't noticed it before. But there it was, bare and thorny, and Wanda, who loved beautiful things, felt her heart beat faster. So see what she's noticing? It's just like the cover picture. She's noticing this, it's basically a thorn bush, it looks like, okay? It had been growing for a while. It's about 2 feet tall. But why do you think her heart beat faster? I guess that's the question to ask. Maybe she thinks she can get it to bloom. Let's see what happens. She says, a rose bush. Look at those curvy lines. She said to herself, my very own rose bush. So she thinks it's a rose bush. Now, the rose bush didn't really belong to Wanda, but since nobody seemed to own the lot or the heaps of junk that were piled there, she decided she would care for this bush and make it her own. So nobody owned the lot. It was vacant. Nobody lived there. So she took it upon herself to say, what can I do to get roses to bloom? All during school, she thought about her rose bush. During art, she drew pictures of what it would look like in bloom. During library, she borrowed books about arranging flowers. During science, she had asked so many questions about how to take care of it that finally her teacher said she must really stop asking questions about roses and start thinking about electricity, which was what the lesson was about. So all her thinking is about roses, this rose bush, how she can make it bloom. After school, she rushed to the rose bush. It was still bare and thorny, right? No flowers. Maybe it needs some sun, thought Wanda. So she put down her school bag and began dragging some of the nearby trash out to the curb. So she started to remove some of the trash. Mrs. Turner, who was on her way to the store, stopped to help her with a broken chair. Cleaning up the neighborhood, Wanda? Mrs. Turner asks. That's a nice project for you. Oh, I'm not just cleaning, Wanda told her. I'm helping my rose bush to get more sun so it will bloom. Your rose bush? Mrs. Turner asked. Where is your rose bush? Over there, Wanda said, pointing proudly to the bare, thorny bush. So she's pointing to it proudly. Proudly. So she's full of pride. She's feeling like this is going to be great. This is my rose bush. Let's see what this Mrs. Turner's thinking, though. Let's see what she says. Oh, Wanda, I'm not sure that's a rose bush, Mrs. Turner said gently. Sure it is, said Wanda. I've seen rose bushes in books, and this is what they look like before they bloom. You just wait. In a few weeks, this lot will be full of roses. Well, said Mrs. Turner, shaking her head, good luck with it, Wanda. And as she walked away, Mrs. Turner thought to herself, if that's a rose bush, then I'm the Queen of England. Okay, Okay, so what do you think she means by that? If somebody says, if that's a rose bush, then I'm the Queen of England. Is she really the Queen of England? No. So I don't think she believes that that's a rose bush. She's like, if that's a rose bush, I'm the Queen of England. No. The next day after school, Wanda hurried to her rose bush. It was still bare and thorny. Maybe it needs more air, thought Wanda. So she put down her school bag and began taking more of the trash out to the curb. Once I get all this trash out of here, nothing will block the air from getting to my rose bush, Wanda thought. So she's still moving out the trash, which is nice. When Mr. Claudel was on his way home from work, he saw Wanda trying to drag an old door and stopped to help. Cleaning up the neighborhood, are you, Wanda? He asked. Not just cleaning, Mr. Claudel, Wanda told him. I'm getting rid of this trash so my rose bush will get more air. A rose bush here? Mr. Claudel asked. And so Wanda showed him the rose bush. I don't know much about gardening, Wanda, said Mr. Claudel said, frowning, but I don't think that's a rose bush. Sure it is, said Wanda, and in a few weeks, this lot will be filled with the sweetest smelling roses you ever saw. She thanked Mr. Claudel for his help and went off to drag away some more trash. Mr. Claudel shook his head. If that's a rose bush, he said to himself, then I'm the King of France. So is he the King of France? No. Do you think he believes that that's a rose bush? No. He's using a little bit of humor. He's like, if that's that, then I'm the King of France. Well, he doesn't believe that that's a rose bush. But you know what? She does, and she's doing everything she can to make it bloom. Every day after school that week and the next, Wanda worked in the empty lot. Mrs. Giamatti, who lived in an apartment next door, gave Wanda trash bags from the old shoes, beer bottles, broken toys, and bits of glass that she was picking up. Well, that's nice. So she helped her with the trash bag. You've done a great job cleaning up this lot, Wanda, Mrs. Giamatti said. So see, this is the lot. It's been abandoned. Nobody owns it, but it's been very dirty. And look at how clean it's becoming. Oh, I'm not just cleaning, Wanda said. I have to get rid of all this trash so my rose bush will get enough sun and fresh air to bloom. But where is your rose bush? Mrs. Giamatti asked. So Wanda showed her. Let's see if you think Mrs. Giamatti is going to think it's a rose bush? Mrs. Giamatti put her hand on Wanda's shoulder and spoke softly to her. Wanda, she said, this is not a rose bush. Oh, but it is, said Wanda, and in a few weeks, this lot will be filled with the most beautiful roses you ever saw. That would be nice, said Mrs. Giamatti, but I don't want you to be disappointed if this bush doesn't bloom. Don't worry, Mrs. Giamatti, Wanda answered. I won't be disappointed. Mrs. Giamatti sighed. This is not a rose bush, and will never be one, she thought to herself. This is really, these neighbors and these people that live near this lot really are looking out for her. She doesn't want her to be disappointed. And they're not saying it out loud, like they're thinking a lot of these things to themselves. They're not telling her directly, because she says, this is not a rose bush and will never be one. She thought to herself. She didn't say that to poor Wanda. Let's see, though. The next week, when the rose bush still wasn't blooming, Wanda talked to her school librarian. I need some books about getting roses to bloom, she told Ms. Jones. Oh, do you have a rose bush, Wanda? Ms. Jones asked. Yes, but it doesn't have flowers yet, and I know it has enough sun and fresh air. Does it have water? Ms. Jones asked. Water, Wanda said. Of course, that will make it bloom. Well, let's see. She's really trying to solve this problem, right? That afternoon, she hurried to the rose bush. It still was bare and thorny. She looked at the dry ground and smelled. Don't worry, little bush, she said out loud. I'll get you some water, and then you'll be able to grow flowers. Wanda went to the butcher shop across the street. Mr. Sanchez, would you please give me some water for my rose bush? Rose bush? Is that what I see you taking care of and talking to every day over there? Are you sure that's a rose bush, Viola? Mr. Sanchez asked. Oh, yes, I'm sure, Wanda said, but it can't bloom because it needs water. Mr. Sanchez gave her water in a plastic bucket. I hope that really is a rose bush, Wanda, he said, looking at her doubtfully. So if he's looking at her doubtfully, he's full of doubt. That means he doesn't really think it's a rose bush either. You'll see, Wanda told him. In a few weeks, that whole lot will be full of roses. As Wanda carried the water to her rose bush, Mr. Sanchez muttered, in a few weeks, that thorn bush will still be a thorn bush. He doesn't think that, and he's muttering it to himself. He's being very quiet, but he doesn't think. But look at how beautiful the lot is now. It's all cleaned up. Let's see what happens. Every day Wanda ran to her rose bush after school, but every day it was still bare and thorny. She watered it and sang to it and checked its bare branches for roses. Mr. Claudiel, on his way home from work, stopped to see if there were any roses yet. Mrs. Turner, on her way to the butcher shop, stopped to see if there were any roses yet. Mrs. Giamatti, seeing Wanda in the lot, called down from her apartment to ask if there were any roses yet. When Wanda went to the library at school, Ms. Jonas asked if there were any roses yet. And every day when Wanda went to the butcher shop for water, Mr. Sanchez asked if there were any roses yet. To each person, Wanda would answer the same thing. Just you wait. Pretty soon this whole lot will be filled with roses. Wanda is what we call very optimistic. She is truly believing that this thorn bush is a rose bush and it's going to bloom. She's not giving up. Okay, she's very persistent. And you can tell everyone here really cares because they keep asking about it. They're very concerned about Wanda. And then one day in June, Wanda had an idea. Looking at the bare, thorny bush, she said, if my rose bush won't give roses to me, I'll just have to give roses to my rose bush. And when she saw Mrs. Turner, Mr. Claudel, Mrs. Giamatti, Ms. Jones, and Mr. Sanchez, she gave each of them an invitation that said, please come for tea and muffins in Wanda's rose garden Saturday morning at 9. Now, what do you think her idea is? She said, if my rose bush won't give roses to me, I'm going to give roses to my rose bush. Oh dear, said Mrs. Turner, is she still expecting to get roses from that bush? Oh no, said Mr. Claudel, and she's worked so hard too. Oh my, says Mrs. Giamatti, she'll be so disappointed. Oh darn, said Mr. Sanchez, there must be something I can do. ... Oh, good, said Mrs. Jones, who had only heard about the bush from Wanda and hadn't seen it for herself. And I'll bring the muffins. So, look at what happens. They are all so concerned. That, the night before the tea party, everyone was very busy. And the very next morning at 9, everyone was surprised to see Wanda's rose bush covered with roses. Paper roses that Wanda had made herself and carefully tied to each bare thorny branch. So she had made paper roses and she tied them to each branch. But more surprising yet, let's see what happens. And look at these nice squiggly lines. Everyone who came to the party had brought along a rose bush to plant near Wanda's, except Ms. Jones, who had bought delicious blueberry muffins. So look at, they all brought a rose bush. Why do you think that they did that? See, the bush that she had didn't grow any roses, so she put the paper ones on, but now they're bringing her one. What do you think she's going to do? After they had eaten their muffins and drank their tea, they all got busy planting rose bushes. Mr. Claudel and Mrs. Turner dug the holes. Mrs. Giamatti held the bushes in place, while Wanda and Ms. Jones filled in around the roots with soil, and Mr. Sanchez brought water from his shop and watered them all thoroughly. When the work was finished, Mr. Claudel said, "Wanda, this is going to be a rose garden fit for a king or a queen," said Mrs. Turner. Wanda and the others smiled. So they planted all of those bushes in the lot and made it beautiful. And they did it together, kind of like a community, right? They worked together as a team. And later that summer, the whole lot was filled with the biggest, most beautiful, sweet-smelling roses that anyone had ever seen, just as Wanda had always said it would be. So it really was a community effort. Okay, so talk about the message that you think this author, Pat Brisson, wants us to learn. Okay, that maybe if we work together as neighbors in a community, then we can really make a difference, right? And not to give up hope. So what I'd like you to do today, again, is think about things that you can do to make your neighborhood, your anything more beautiful, okay?